Hi, shalom, friends. If I told you a slap on the wrist, would you know what I'm talking about? I think you would. It's a common form of expression. I mean, something light, a warning or perhaps a punishment is a slap on the wrist. But if I told you a slap in the face, I think that's very graphic. If God forbid, if you ever experienced a slap in the face, you probably still remember it. I mean, the blush has gone away, the physical hurt has gone away, but that message of abuse maybe, that stays a very, very long time. And a slap in the face is a big rejection. But I want to share with you how a slap in the face could do just the opposite. And here's a story. The names are made up. The story is not. There's a young man, very young man. He was 11 years old. His name was Nachum Finkelstein, and he was a student in the Bavava Yeshiva. At that time, the dean of the yeshiva was a very, very beautiful man, a tzaddik, a righteous man, and a leader. And his name was Rabbi Abovov, and he was the dean. Now, the yeshiva had many, many Jewish children, boys, and it was a small building with a very small yard. So during recess, all the kids would come out. They were jockeying for position. You couldn't have a normal soccer game. It was just impossible. So they jostled each other, they took turns, and it was just very uncomfortable. However, 2 blocks away from the yeshiva was a yard from the city. And in the beginning, the yeshiva used to let the boys go play basketball and so on in the larger yard, but the kids found it very difficult to leave the yard to go back to school after 15 or 20 minutes. So the school put out a strong message: no one during recess is allowed to go to the yard. But kids snuck out anyway to play in the yard, and this young boy, I think I said his name was Nachum. Nachum used to go out and play. They always made sure, though, that they would run from the yard to get into the playground of the yeshiva in time. Well, one time, Nachum was practicing his basketball and did not pay that much attention to the time. By the time he realized that recess was over, it was impossible for him to get back on time. So he knows that there's going to be a punishment. He comes into class, everyone is sitting, the teacher is teaching, and as soon as he opens up the door, the teacher didn't have to know where he was. He said, Nachum, go straight to the principal. And he comes into the principal, and his face is down, and he's not relishing this. And at that time, the dean was there, Reb Shlomo. And Nachum comes in, and Reb Shlomo looks at him, and he says, why are you here? So he mumbles, I broke the rules. I went to the yard. So Rabbi Shlomo says to the boy, but you know that studying Torah is very, very precious. Every minute is very precious. And actually, you boys, when you study Torah, you bring tremendous blessing to all. And just going to the yard, I know it's very attractive, but if it takes away time from Torah, we just can't allow it. And Nachum says, I know that. So the dean says, I'm really very sorry. I have to punish you. He says, I know that. He says, you know what the punishment is? A pachin ponim, that's in Yiddish, a slap in the face. And Nachum says, I know that. So he says, okay, well, pick up your face and close your eyes. And he's expecting that slap in the face. And instead, he feels a very soft caress, a gentle caress on his cheek. And he hears the Rebbe saying, open up your eyes. And with a twinkle in his eyes, he says, okay, I gave you the slap. Now go upstairs and study Torah. Many decades have passed. And this Nachum says, I'll never forget that slap in the face. there was so much love and so much concern and so much affection that whenever I have to think of disciplining, I remember that slap. It wasn't a slap, it was a caress. It was a love tap. I love the story because it tells me that discipline doesn't always have to be in a rough and gruff way. And for you that are listening, I'm sure you know that because today there's no corporeal punishment, you're not allowed to hit and so on, though it was a way of life for 2 generations ago. Listen to another story. This one is biblical and it has midrashic overtones. A little bit more than 2,200 years ago, at the last days of the first holy temple, the king of Assyria sent his general Sancherib to essentially conquer Judea. He conquered the northern kingdom and then came back to conquer the southern kingdom of Judea, which at that time the capital city was Jerusalem and the holy temple was the jewel of Judea. And he came not alone, he came with 185,000 soldiers, because he was told that the southern part of Judea is well fortified, the city of Jerusalem has large walls, and here he is, he's looking at the city of Jerusalem, it's in the Passover season, and he laughs. For this tiny city, I had to bring 185,000 soldiers? And he said derisively, if they all took a stone and just threw it over the wall, it would destroy the city. And he has someone that speaks Hebrew, and this fellow gets up on a hill and addresses the inhabitants with blasphemy. Your God cannot help. Our God is stronger than your God. Our general has captured everything. He's even captured your brothers and sisters that lived in the northern kingdom. So your goners, you should open up the gates and surrender. And at that time there lived a very righteous king, a direct descendant of King David. His name was King Hezekiah. And at that time, one of the most prominent of the prophets lived. His name was Isaiah, Yeshayahu. And the king says to the prophet, what should I do? What does God want from me? Should I surrender? Because it's hopeless. We cannot fight this massive army. And under inspiration, Yeshayahu turns to the king and says, the Almighty God says, not one of them will come into the city. And essentially, I will protect you and the city because of David, my servant. He just reassured him, don't do anything, God will provide. So it's the night of Passover, according to the tradition, and the king says, well, if God's going to take care of the whole problem, there's no reason why I have to lose a night's sleep. And with absolute faith, he goes to bed. Says, as the story is told, God sends down an angel and he says, destroy the 185,000 soldiers. Now here, the Medrash gives more than one interpretation. How did the angel destroy these people? And one interpretation is that the angels sang a song of praise to God. After all, it was the night of Passover. And when the soldiers heard this angelic song, their soul or their life force simply left them. And the following morning, it was silent. And when the beleaguered Jews looked outside, not only did they see a destroyed army, but they were also able to take their weapons and their food, etc. Beautiful story, which happened, a beautiful midrash, which is inspiring, but I'm wondering, can we derive a lesson from it? And this is the lesson that I derive from it. I think about 185,000 uncouth, ruthless soldiers. They have one thing in mind: to kill, to maim, to rape, to destroy. and to walk away with loot. And they're willing and ready and trained to fight with blood and everything else. How can we get rid of such a person? Reason with them? You think if you spoke about how unjust it is to destroy the city of God, that they would be impressed? No, you have to meet them with a sword. You have to meet them with horses. You have to fight them with bows and arrows. This story teaches us not necessarily. If they hear the music of holiness, they will die. Meaning what? Not only physically, but their warlike qualities, or even the word evil, will leave them. Because evil cannot tolerate such intense holiness and goodness. And as wax melts before fire, the evil would dissolve before holiness. Okay, that's the lesson for me. How do I translate it? Everyone's talking about how do we solve the problem of war. We have, of course, Russia, Ukraine. I'm more concerned about Israel and its neighbors or not neighbors. And in general, the world is so unstable. There's so much warlike, so much competition and envy. How can we combat that? And that's the word, combat. Okay, so they have a bomb, we have 2 bombs. They have soldiers, we have double. They have economic might, we'll double it. Or we're fighting force against force. What would be, and it's not a dream, but it seems foreign, what would be if all the newspapers would report on the tremendous good that people are doing? Whether it be fighting ignorance, fighting racism, elevating the poor, the disadvantaged. This is happening. You just don't hear it. In your own neighborhood, there are many, many good people, really good people, people that would return a lost object, even if there's money in it. People that would help a neighbor if they weren't embarrassed or worried. People that would gladly volunteer if given the opportunity. What happens if the world press would talk about that? And you opened up CNN or you opened up one of the other channels, and the lead story is that this and this school sent out this and this amount of students to help others. And the message would be over and over how good, how proper, how wonderful, how gratifying, how satisfying goodness is. The world would change. Because when you hear a melody and it's sweet and it's holy and it's angelic, whatever evil's inside of you will just melt away. Just simply melt away. Instead of reading about scandals, read about so-and-so celebrated his 45th anniversary with great-grandchildren. Make a story out of it because it's worthy. So everyone that reads it will say, wow, that's beautiful, that's wonderful, it's possible. So why am I thinking of, I don't know, of divorcing or not getting married or not having children? The blessings are here. They're just not being reported. When Mashiach will come, and he might come today. We actually hope he comes today. And today meaning whenever you are conscious that there is a moment of time, that is the today that he might come. The world will be filled with godly knowledge. And if there's godly knowledge, there's no room for stupidity. There's no room for negativity. It will be a constant barrage of open your eyes and see the goodness that actually exists and the goodness that will increase. So why don't myself included, in fact primarily talking to myself, why don't I and you, or you and me, add our voices to a beautiful symphony of goodness and kindness, of holiness, of decency, of truth. And in that way, help accelerate that wonderful day that we're all waiting, the coming of Mashiach. Amen.